everybody, and welcome back to the road to Halloween.
This last weekend, I got the chance to go and see a double feature of Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein over at the Palo Alto Sanford Theater, and I thought, you know what, I just want to talk about the first 3 Frankenstein movies this time. Now, the reason why I want to talk about these 3 movies is because all 3 have brought major pieces to Halloween and horror pop culture. And similarly to Bela Lugosi with Dracula, Boris Karloff is majorly responsible for how we think about the monster today. Unlike Bela Lugosi, though, Boris Karloff couldn't just put on the costume himself and be the character that he thought of. He had to get his makeup done, and it was all done by this guy, Jack Pierce, who is a super famous makeup artist from back in the day and worked on a ton of horror movies over the years. And Jack Pierce is responsible for us thinking about the monster having bolts in his neck and, you know, a flat head and being really tall and wearing kind of a sort of suit all the time. Both of them together created the monster as we perceive the monster to be today. Taking a closer look at Frankenstein, that movie is responsible for everything we kind of think of when we think of a mad scientist. Somebody with a wild look in their eye and, you know, weird scientific instrumentation firing off with electricity and all kinds of stuff that we don't recognize, that's kind of big and hulking, and I don't know, it's just someone needing to throw a giant switch. I mean, that all comes from these movies, but also specifically Frankenstein, as well as the super famous line, "It's alive." When we think of somebody saying "it's alive," the way we hear it is the way that it was said in the movie, which is, "It's alive, it's alive, it's alive! In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God." That alone, coming from this movie, is huge because, I mean, even Party City uses "It's alive" today. I mean, it's in advertisements, it's in parodies, it's in the new Addams Family movie. It's been used ever since. And yes, the line, "it's alive," is in the book, but it's not in the same context. Dr. Frankenstein is saying it's alive more calmly, kind of more freaked out, not excited and like, you know, it's done in the movie. Another major thing from this movie that when you look at it on a surface level, if you're not paying attention, you'll be like, oh, this character is Igor, because they're hunchback and they're working with Dr. Frankenstein. Well, that's not the case. This character, who looks like what we perceive to be Igor, is named Fritz. Right? Kind of strange. And you know what's really weird is the guy that plays Fritz is Dwight Frye, who I mentioned from Dracula before. Dwight Frye is literally in all 3 of these movies as different characters, which, you know, it's not a thing that we see today, but I guess at the time, if you're not worried about people seeing a movie over and over and over again, then maybe having the same actor play different roles wasn't a big deal. I don't know. But in Frankenstein, he plays Dr. Frankenstein's hunchback assistant Fritz, who pretty much serves as what we picture Igor to be, kinda, you know, subservient, a little bit crazy, and, you know, is in this movie is part of the reason why the monster goes on a rampage. We'll get to Igor a little bit later, but for now, let's get to The Bride of Frankenstein. First off, let's just talk about the title, Bride of Frankenstein. Most people know that the monster is not actually called Frankenstein. The doctor is called Frankenstein. So the Bride of Frankenstein can't be the monster bride that's intended for the monster. So it kind of doesn't make any sense. But even like the antagonist of the story, Dr. Pretorius, says the Bride of Frankenstein in this really weird way.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
I don't know. But, you know, it's, regardless of that confusing bit, it's great because, you know, thinking that in the 30s having sequels, you know, was, especially in a horror film, I think this is the first sequel for a horror film ever made, and it literally picks up right where the last one left off. And, you know, you're back with all the same characters. I mean, there's some new ones, and at least I think just the main actress is replaced with somebody else who does not look like the same actress from the first movie, but what are you going to do? This movie provides the Bride of Frankenstein character, which we all have seen parodied in Halloween specials, in Tim Burton movies, and all over the place. You know, the big, tall, Marge-like hair with the white stripe down the middle. I mean, it's iconic. It's something that we're all familiar with. When you see it, you're not confused as to what it's supposed to be. But the thing is, in this movie, that character is only around for maybe 2 minutes, tops, at the very end. And it's crazy that something that's around for like such a brief moment can have such a visual, like, iconic presence in Halloween and horror pop culture. But overall, as much as she's only around for a little bit, the movie's great. It makes you feel something for the monster, where the first one you kind of feel bad for him and you know, sympathize, but this one you just want the monster to have a win somewhere. In this movie, Dwight Frye is back playing an assistant, but this time he's playing an assistant to the antagonist, Dr. Pretorius, and then later on kind of works with Dr. Frankenstein as well. But he's not even the same assistant. He's a completely different person. Still kind of crazy, still, you know, robbing graves, but not the same character at all, which is just, I don't know, kind of confusing.
But
yeah, he's there, so keep an eye out for him. And finally, moving on to The Son of Frankenstein. This movie was made a number of years after Bride of Frankenstein, and, you know, continuity, even more so than the difference between Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, is kind of out the window. I mean, there's loose reference. It's still the same monster. It's still Boris Karloff. But they, you know, bend some rules, and they introduce the character of Igor. Right? It's the third movie that we finally meet Igor. Not in the first, not in the second, the third one. And he's played by Bela Lugosi, who is being a completely different character from Dracula, but arguably this is one of his best roles, you know, compared to any of his other movies. If Dracula is number one, Igor is a close second. I mean, he's just a gnarly dude the whole time, and he's great. He's kind of funny. He's got this broken neck thing that he, like, knocks on every once and again to, like, I don't know. It's a goofy effect, but it's fun. So this Igor character tries to say that, oh man, I was the assistant to Dr. Frankenstein and helped him create the monster. But we've seen those movies, and no, he wasn't. He was not there at all. There was a hunchback character named Fritz, who I don't really want to get too much into because, you know, I want you to see that movie. But the thing is, he's not there. So they just kind of made him up. Like, made up the name, and somehow from Son of Frankenstein alone, now we associate Igor and Dr. Frankenstein as a duo forevermore. I don't get it either. Two people I want to mention from this movie beyond just Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. I want to mention Basil Rathbone, who plays the son of Dr. Frankenstein. If you've never seen him in a movie before, oh man, this one is great. I mean, he's just got a great presence. He's got a lot, like, the character has a lot of respect for his dad, but he wants to be like a good father and a husband, but like he's also a scientist and wants to, like, you know, he's so concerned with gaining back respect for the family name and for his dad. And
I, as a man, should destroy him. But as a scientist, I should do everything in my power to bring him back to conscious life, so that the world can study his abnormal functions. That would vindicate my father, and and his name would be enshrined among the immortals.
It's great. I mean, when he's on the edge, you believe it, and the way that the camera frames him and shows him when he's kind of nervous or being investigated or whatever, it's perfect. The other person I want to mention from this movie is the child actor, Donnie Dunnigan, who, as much as his acting is absolutely in tune with that of a 6-year-old for the time, I mean, not highly trained, just was probably fed his lines and then he delivered them. I don't know. He's just kind of a funny presence because he's just not bothered by much. And that same child actor went on to be the voice of Bambi just a few years later, which, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of neat trivia. So I hope you check out all 3 Frankenstein movies. I mean, each one has different qualities that are awesome and totally worth watching. I mean, for myself, my personal favorite, I'd say, is probably Son of Frankenstein. So I guess in order, I'd probably say Son of Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Frankenstein is number 3. But that being said, each one is awesome. I mean, even though Frankenstein is my 3rd favorite, I mean, if you've never seen it, it's absolutely worth a watch. And yeah, seeing that horror and Halloween history come alive in a movie, dude. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've been enjoying the road to Halloween so far. If you'd like to see more of these videos, I've got a playlist of all the other Road to Halloween episodes that have come before. I think up there somewhere. I don't know. I've never done that before. And if you want to subscribe, you could subscribe down here, I think.
You